Hello everybody, my name is Mackenzie and I'm a senior this year at MSU, and for my first discussion board I am going to be showing you my learning environment. So first I'll show you where I'm at. I am in my room, sorry if you hear my dog, and I'll talk about some of these things and how they help me learn the best. So the first thing I want to talk about is my beliefs about learning. I feel like everybody has their own learning style and it helps when people know what that is. So it took me a while to figure this out, but I really like to get up and move around when I am studying, or if I've been sitting here for a long time, I like to get up and kind of review what I've been doing. For example, if I'm studying with flashcards, I will either do it myself or have somebody quiz me on them, and I like to get up and kind of pace around. And I've learned that it just helps me do what my body needs to do and do what my mind needs to do at the same time, instead of feeling so isolated to one area. Also, I really like to be organized, sometimes a little too organized. It helps me in not being too overwhelmed with my education and knowing exactly what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. So first thing I want to talk about from chapter 1 is the OOPS survey, or I've been reading it as the OOPS survey. It's just a survey given to educators to address misconceptions about how they can facilitate students' learning. So the first thing I wanted to focus on, I'm going to read it off of here. It's one of the statements. It says, anxiety sometimes helps students learn and perform more successfully in the classroom, which was a true statement that I thought at first was false. I was very confident because I looked at the word anxiety and I immediately connected it with a bad and just negative connotation to the word. After I read further into the chapter and realized that I was wrong, I also realized that there is good forms of motivational anxiety that helps students get through their work. And the reason I chose to talk about this was because it is kind of what drives me in my education. I focus a lot on deadlines and academic success, and I feel like a little bit of that good anxiety motivates me to get my coursework done every week, or focus on getting to the end of a module or something like that. And I think if there wasn't a little bit of that good anxiety, I wouldn't be as motivated to get stuff done on time or early. Again, on the survey, another thing that helped me realize is that it's okay to be wrong. And I've been focusing on this a lot in my education and making sure that I don't put too much pressure on myself. This helped me do this because I got every single question on the survey wrong. And so it helped me realize, okay, I may not know this now. Let's do a little bit of work and we can address it then. This kind of pertains to my learning environment, not necessarily the physical learning environment, but just kind of the mental state I need to be in when I'm in this environment. It's okay to have an open mind. Even if you think you do know something about a topic, there's always more that you can know. There's always more that you can learn. So just completing the survey and reading further into the actual answers really helped me understand that and understand the mindset that I need to keep when I'm in my learning environment. The second concept I wanted to talk about was qualitative and quantitative research data. So first, qualitative research data is focused on descriptions of things, so like the color, or how an environment feels, or how the research feels, something like that. And it's not in a numerical presentation. And then quantitative data is a numerical representation of research. So it could be the height of something, or it could be grade percentages and stuff like that. I focused on looking at my learning environment and seeing what qualitative and quantitative data I could pull out of it. So some of the qualitative data I could pull out of it was how positive it feels. I like to write things in really bright and fun colors, like my praxis information that's above me, just to keep myself from viewing things in a negative light. I think that if I had everything up there in black and grays, I would see the stress that comes along with the praxis exam and stuff like that, and instead I chose to make it bright and fun and positive. Also, I like to keep positive notes and things that remind me of my end goal. So, for example, I have little teacher notebooks around everywhere. I keep those just to remind myself that there is an end goal. You're not doing all of this coursework just to do the coursework, you know? Some of the quantitative data that I found in my environment, this was harder for me to find, but I realized that my calendar is one. It helps me count down the days until a deadline or a project. Also, that kind of pertains to the lists that I make. I like to write my assignments every week on these big sticky notes, and it helps me figure out how many of each thing that I need to do. Deadlines is another example of quantitative data, and also one that I really focus on is grade percentages. I really focus on academic success, and so the grade percentages in classes or GPA really affects my learning environment, and once again, not the physical one, but more of the mental aspect of it, because I really want to succeed, and so it kind of just pertains in that way. So how does this all intertwine with my learning environment? I put a lot of consideration into the way that I organize things like my calendar and planner, and I also take a lot of consideration in my learning style and how I figured out that I love to get up and move around when I'm learning or studying. And I think that's really important for everyone to do and for everyone to find how they can best be successful. I wanted to make one last connection with chapter 1 in just taking into consideration all of these things that I've talked about. And I wanted to make the connection to the quantitative correlational studies. So I realized that when I have a higher organization in my environment, I also do well, or I also do better in my academic success. And same thing, if I do worse with organization, I do worse in my academics. And so I realized that this is kind of a positive correlation between the two. All right.